Welcome to episode 395 of the DFO Rundown, as always, presented by Bet365. Get in the game, use the promo code NATION. As of course, hey, lots of MLB action. There's always a game. We might even get into the Euro Cup team FIFA World Cup, which is kind of a new one. If you're a gambler, you'll love that at Bet365. I'm Jason Gregor, alongside Frank Seravalli. As it is draft week, NHL free agency begins next Tuesday, July 1st, but lots happen between now and then. It'll be the first draft without all the teams in attendance, and it sounds like it might be the last draft without all the teams in attendance. Frank, how you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, busy week. Always one of the busiest weeks on the hockey calendar. There's a lot percolating, both on the trade and the wink free agent front. There's the goalie market that's churning at its own pace as well. And there's a whole lot of irons in the fire.
Well, yeah. Well, today we're going to get into the 8 Western teams who made the playoffs. We've talked about the 16 teams who didn't make it. We'll get to the East on Thursday. There are some moves like this week. We are going to see some trades, leading up at the draft. There always is, more so on day 2 than on day 1. We kind of saw some the Burakovsky for Veleno deal. It's more of a cap dump, really. But you look at that, and any players you think are obvious to be moved on day 2?
Well, not necessarily obvious to be moved, but I would say my attention is focused squarely on what's going on with the Buffalo Sabres and JJ Peterka. I think the interest has been real. I think the Sabres are mulling over a bunch of different offers. They've had some really interesting things on their plate that they just are working through. And, why this week? Will it happen? I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but you mentioned free agency next Tuesday. He's got the ability to sign an offer sheet. And I think that looms large. Yeah. Could the Sabres just match it and it makes life easy for Kevin Adams to retain the player? I guess. But I think there's enough on the table at this point in time to think that this is a very real possibility that outside of Mitch Marner, the best player available this offseason as a 23-year-old top-line winger could be on the move.
You look at JJ Peterka, would he risk signing an offer sheet if it means that Buffalo matches?
I guess it'll depend on how poisonous it is.
Wow. Because that would be quite the thing. Yeah, I want out of Buffalo. I'm going to sign an offer sheet. The Sabres match it.
Well, I mean, you'd be betting on them being financially strapped to do it. Terry Pegula would have to write a check. And
yes.
Are you really going to want to, let's just say you make it heavy signing bonus, which they don't do in Buffalo. There's not a player on their team this upcoming season, I think outside of Zucker, who has a $1 million signing bonus. If all of a sudden you design it so the player's getting $16 million in the next 360 days, could be problematic.
Yeah, because you look at the offer sheet for anybody who doesn't know this year, it's changed again. It always is based on the cap. And so if we look at a guy like JJ Peterka, any contract, I think the low end would be 4.68 to just over 7 mil. That gets you a first and a third. Then just over 7 mil to 9.36 gets you a first, a second, and a third. And then 9.36 to 11.7 and change gets you 2 firsts, a second, and a third. And then anything above 11,700,193 will get you 4 first rounders. How high do you think a team? Because the whole goal of an offer sheet is you make it in hopes to get the player.
I think you'd have to design it in a way that you're just under that 9.3 something threshold.
Yeah. Do you try a Joe Sakic? Remember when the Rangers offered Joe Sakic ridiculous amount and Colorado had to match it for 1 year, right?
Yep.
Like a short
I don't think 1 year would get it done, but I think if you did a 2 or a 3 year deal, a 3-year deal with all signing bonus, $27 million due within 700 and some days, might not be easy.
Yeah, no,
they can do it. I mean, the owner has the wherewithal.
Yeah.
But do you really want to match it and dig into your own pocket for a player that doesn't want to be there?
So the Sabres
that's what he's up against. Kevin Adams is, well, if I'm really just going to have to go down the offer sheet path, there's teams that have put top end first round picks in this year's Friday's draft on the table already.
Yeah.
So are you just better off taking a top end pick and a player in a draft that you have studied a lot and know? Or do you prefer the fear of the unknown? The Sabres aren't interested in futures. They've told teams, and their target is a right shot defenseman. They're looking for a right shot defenseman. That's what they're in the market for.
And they also might be trading Bowen Byram. So
we'll see. They are trading Bowen Byram, but
yeah.
The question is, will they get this deal done first?
What about on a fun place when you look at players and right? What about Dobson for Peterka? Could you see that being the basis of a trade?
I could. I do think that these teams have talked, and I do think that is one of the things that has been talked about. We've talked about and mentioned the initial high ask from Noah Dobson that I think really put the Islanders back on their heels, knowing that this is probably not going to be a very comfortable negotiation. And I'm not predicting at all that he gets traded. I don't know what the likelihood of that is, but they are absolutely evaluating the market. And my question would be, if the New York Islanders, and there's a big if the Islanders are putting Dobson on the table for Peterka, why haven't they already done it?
Yeah. Well, yeah. To me, that's just, okay, now you got Dobson. He's going to cost you huge money. You've got Power at huge money. You got Dahlin at huge money. Like, doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, you'd have 29, I don't know, 28, $27 million in half of your defense core.
Yeah.
But you've got options then. You can still trade Byram. You could keep him at that point. You could buy out Samuelson, who's under 26 and would have a very reasonable cap hit. Be for a long time. It'd be like 700 and some $1,000, but it'd be for 10 years. And you'd save your owner $14.4 million in real cash, by the way, which is not insignificant. But then you could also trade one of Power or Dahlin and totally revamp your defense. So I think it would provide them with a ton of options and maybe the best value proposition if you're talking about moving Peterka.
Mm-hmm. Well, then the Islanders got a pretty big hole in their defense core too. That's the thing. If you trade Noah Dobson, I would think you'd want a defenseman in return, but
also could go fill that void somewhere else, and you're picking Matthew Schaefer number 1 overall.
Yeah, but you're picking Matthew Schaefer, but he's not going to be a difference maker for a few years. So we'll see where it goes. Like maybe the Islanders are finally going to rebuild. We'll see. Now let's get into our 8 teams that we haven't talked about in the West yet. We'll start at the St. Louis Blues, who obviously last summer had a pretty eventful summer with the offer sheets, Frank. And, there are some rumblings that maybe a team's going to offer sheet Joel Hofer, who is one of the youngest goalies who people are high on. He's 24 years of age, doesn't have a boatload of experience. Other than that, St. Louis, like they got a lot of their guys signed. Radek Fax is a UFA, Ryan Suter's a UFA. That's it. So what do you make of the Blues and what their offseason is going to look like?
I think they've been a team for a while that's spinning their wheels, and they made a great coaching change, which saved their season. They were obviously really aggressive last summer in adding 2 younger new pieces in Broberg and Holloway, but they're a team that kind of seems to be stuck in neutral. They're not really young. They're not really old. They've got a lot of commitments, particularly on their back end. Where is this team heading? What's their ceiling? And I think that's the thing that I've struggled with when evaluating the Blues the most is I don't know if their ceiling is any higher than the place that they got to last season as currently constituted. And we know that Doug Armstrong is willing to, change things around, but what does that look like? How aggressive will he be? And what can he really make happen given their current state of affairs? So I wonder if this is a guy that's willing to do just about anything. Like, could we see a market this summer? And I don't think it's happened yet because I haven't heard his name out there. But you see someone like Jimmy Snuggerud come in and the success that he could have in a relatively short period of time. Does that make Jordan Kyrou expendable? He can do all the things that Jordan Kyrou can do probably in a 2-year period of time. You're committed to Kyrou for the foreseeable future. Is this the time, if you've got an opportunity to move off of him, that makes sense?
I guess depending on what you get, it would be a fascinating trade, no question. I like Kyrou. He's a good, young, proven player. Like, can Snuggerud be that
young.
good?
He's 27. That's my point.
Yeah.
These guys are not young anymore. They're not. 27 is not young.
Yeah, but I always like to say about young, look at the 4 teams in the conference finals. Did any of them even have a rookie on their team? Like, I think sometimes there's a lot of focus on young because young thinks is good, but young doesn't win. Like, to me, Kyrou's in his prime.
Yeah, I agree. But I when you have someone that is signed for 6 more years and that takes you to 33, that's all of his prime.
Yeah, well, that's where you should want it. Like, if they want to improve, like, to me, moving Kyrou, well, I guess it depends what you get in return, but what about Binnington?
Well, that's the question that relates to Hofer. Is obviously you like what you've seen from Hofer and his progression. He's bitten off a bit more each season, but seems to be a guy that's poised for more opportunity and minutes that you have devoted at this moment in time to Binnington, who obviously Doug Armstrong is a believer in, having made sure that he was on the Four Nations team that then beat the U.S. in the championship game. Yeah,
well, that's where I'm kind of curious on what they would do, with Binnington and the Hofer situation. Like,
Hofer is available in trade as well. Teams are aware, and I don't know that they're super concerned about the threat of an offer sheet, but I've been told that the price for Hofer is very high.
Yeah, he's got 61 games started in his career, maybe 63, right? Like, he's I don't know how good he is yet, right? Like, you don't really know until the guy becomes the starter, right? Like, he's played 30 games twice and has decent numbers. 2024 was actually better than 2025, but part of that was, I think, the save percentage change is only because of how the NHL tracks shots. I think people have to recognize that when they look at save percentage now. That's why I look at goals against and some other things, because they're reducing the amount of shots goalies face because they're counting them more accurately simply for betting. Right? Like, let's call a spade here.
Okay.
That's why shots are down. Shots aren't really down. Shot attempts aren't down. Just shots on goals are down. Right. That's all because of how they track it. So that's going to impact your save percentage a bit. And like, I don't know how good he is. Like, honestly, like 60 games, Frank, like I use it all the time. Look at Hellebuck. We go down the list, man. Like, it is the most volatile position and the most unpredictable position. I don't know how good Joe Hofer is. Honestly, I don't.
I agree with you, but I would say as it stands right now, I think the goalie community would argue that Joel Hofer's ceiling, the high that he can get to, is better than Jordan Binnington.
Okay. Very, very much so. Very possible, right? Binnington, think about Binnington that he's shown his now, and when he's in big games, right? Like, he can rise to the occasion, and that's a unique trait. If you have a guy who maybe lapses in November and December, that hurts if you're a team that's just trying to get to the playoffs. But if you're a team that's comfortable and can make to the playoffs, you're like, we'll deal with it. But when you get to the playoffs, you want a gamer. So,
and he's it.
Yeah, and that's why you mentioned the goalie market. And so I wonder if you're the Blues. Now, Binnington's got a $6 million price tag for this year, next year. But, if St. Louis wants to retain some salary, maybe that makes it a little bit more enticing. Now, there is a team that we'll talk about later, Frank, that maybe Binnington fits with. So the Blues, I don't know.
So wait. I just want to be clear because you're teasing it. They're not moving Jordan Binnington. What I said to you is Joel Hofer is available in trade. Binnington is staying.
Binnington's staying for sure?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Oh. Because what if a team entices you? So that's what I want to get to. What if a team's willing to entice you? Would you consider? If you're that high on Joel Hofer where it's cheaper, why wouldn't you do it? So that's what we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, another team that made the playoffs in that tough Central Division. A lot of their guys are signed. You look at, they don't have a ton of free agents. They're going to need I don't even think they need a goaltender. I think they've got their backup in Jesper Wallstedt. But the Minnesota Wild, Frank, Bill Guerin is never afraid. He's always wheeling. He's always dealing. Gustav Nyquist, Justin Brazo are both UFAs, and then John Merrill. So, no big ones. They got Declan Chisholm, who's an RFA. Marco Rossi's the big one as the RFA in Minnesota. As far as, because I had mentioned it like a Rossi for a Peterka trade. If you look at point totals and lots of things, you could look at that as a potential starting point, right? Younger players. Rossi had 60 points. Peterka's a little bit more of a goal scorer, had 54. I don't know which side, like who has to add more or not. I think Peterka probably has a little bit more of an upside for sure. But
it would be the Wild. The Wild would do that deal in a heartbeat.
Yes. Yeah, you'd have to add something more to the
or else it would have been done.
Right? You'd have to add something more. But I just wondered, now, I don't know if it solves the problem, right? Because if both teams are leery of what the guys are asking for in contracts, I don't know if it changes anything.
Well, Minnesota's offseason is pretty clear cut. After July 1st, get Kirill Kaprizov signed to an extension. Work on this Marco Rossi situation. They're not giving him away. He is an RFA, and they're not afraid to use whatever means necessary in order to retain the player if needed. They're still in the center market. They've been for a while. I wouldn't be shocked if they took a run at someone like a JJ Peterka with the Islanders. 1-year deal, stopgap situation. Could be a guy that you think about how the center market's dried up. Everyone was saying forever, Brock Nelson. The Wild are going to get Brock Nelson in free agency. If he wanted to go to free agency to go to Mini, all he had to do was wait a few more weeks. He decided to sign at 3 times 7.5 in Colorado. So he's off the board.
Brock Nelson, not Brock Besser.
I said Brock Nelson, did I not?
No, you said Besser, but that's all good.
Oh. Okay. Yeah. Not Brock Besser. That was another player that Wild fans love to talk about because he's another Minnesota native. So they go,
yes.
I'm sorry. I thought I was saying Brock Nelson.
Oh, for a second there, I'm like, have I been asleep at the wheel? Brock Besser signed a contract? I was like, what?
So, yeah, no, my apologies. When it comes to the market, look at how the centers have dried up.
Oh, yeah.
Nelson, Gourde, Taves, go through the list. They're all off the board.
Duchesne.
The market gets amazingly thin in a hurry. So you've got to turn to the trade front if you're trying to improve their team. The Wild have those big, heavy, dead cap hit contracts not coming off the books, just being reduced. And so they've got a little bit of flexibility here for the first time really in Bill Guerin's tenure.
Yep.
Their defense is set for the future. They've got their stud young goalie coming up to the NHL, a first-round pick. They're in an exciting position. So how can they solve for a couple of those things? Let's just drill down for 10 seconds on the Rossi situation. It's not that they don't like the player. They only like the player to a certain price.
Yes.
And he's looking closer to $7 million. The Wild are looking closer to $5 million. And they don't view him long-term as a 2C option. He's probably a pretty ideal 3C. And with that comes that ceiling of the price point. That's the third time I've used the word ceiling today. Of that price point that if you're playing him at 3C, then he can't really come in at much more than that, or else your cap is out of whack. So that's really where things stand. They're willing to make a deal. They're willing to get creative. They're even willing to have a team trade them futures and then turn around and flip those futures for a center that they believe in. So they're not even dead set on just getting a roster player back in return. They're flexible. They're open. And they've been listening on Rossi for a while.
Well, the other thing is, Frank, you look at their blue line. So you got Brock Faber. His new deal kicks in this year. Then you got Zebullium. You throw in David Urasek, who didn't really play for them. Like they got some young defensemen there, 19, beautiful. 21, 22 years of age. Then you throw in Brodin and Middleton. Zach Bogosian was a really good third pair, 6th defenseman for them last year. I kind of like their makeup of their defense. They didn't even mention Jared Spurgeon, at his age of where he's at. But like, I just still wonder, Bill Guerin, man, that guy is never afraid to wheel and deal. Like, I wouldn't count him out of making a big splash.
I think the Wild are a candidate to really vault from playoff team to contender in relatively short order.
You think, like, I still wonder, like, who do they have? Like they need a number one center. That's
okay. But I'm saying over the next 2 years, you address that center position, your young defense grows. You can't see, and Wallstedt becomes something. You don't think that the Wild can can get there?
It's a hard position to get.
Yeah, it is. But the style of play that they've built their team in, that's a team like with the right pieces that has the physicality to match a team like Florida.
Yeah. Do they score enough? That to me is their question at the end of the day. Now, I love Kaprizov, and when he's healthy, like, that's the difference maker for them, right? And I'm curious, like, is he getting Leon Draisaitl money?
I would think he's going to be pretty close.
Yeah. So that's the big one for
14 or 15, and how long?
Yeah. Well, I know fans won't like to hear this from me. I've always said it, man. The big top guys, if they start signing for 5 years more, then it's going to trickle down, and that'll just slowly erode the middle tier guys getting 7-8 years. You're like, if I'm playing Kaprizov 5 years, and I get why the teams want 8, but I can see why the star players, Frank, when you consider the cap and how much it's going to go up here in the next 5 years, why would you lock in at 8 years? If you're an elite player, because you can get a raise again.
See, people have been saying this the last few days since McDavid's press conference, saying, oh, maybe he'd consider signing a shorter term deal. I think people are just projecting what his agent likes to do and what his agent has done previously and saying, oh, this is going to be something that he considers. I mean, consider maybe. I don't know why on any planet it would make sense. Do you think Connor McDavid wants this to be a topic of conversation again in 3 years?
No, I never said that. Like, to me, 5 years.
I'm just saying, I'm speaking to the marketplace and social media in general. Why on earth would they want to? He doesn't want any part of that. It's not what he's chasing, is like, how can I get to the next contract quickly enough to make more money? That's not what he's thinking about.
I agree with you. I think the 5-year term, what it does is it keeps just enough consistent pressure on your organization to keep your team in win mode.
I disagree. Because Connor McDavid at any point, 2 years in, 3 years in, 5 years into an 8-year deal, if he raises his hand and says, I just don't see it anymore, I'm out. They have no choice but to move him. He's got more leverage than any player in the league, and they're going to have no choice but to abide by whatever his wishes are. It's just again, he's got special power that no one else has. So if that's the case, sign for the 8 years, get it over with, and have your team eventually then enjoy the benefits of a rising cap, and then they can further build around you.
Yeah, no, it's possible. I would say this though. Have we ever seen a superstar ever, like, hockey doesn't really have that, right? Superstars don't ask for trades before their contract ends very often.
I mean, it's changing. I think players are learning their voice, but again, does McDavid have any more or less of a hammer if 2 years in or 3 years into an 8-year deal as opposed to a 5-year deal, he doesn't like it anymore?
Yeah. Well, I think it'd be hard to see them in 3 years suddenly just fall off. Like, I did find it interesting. Edmonton loses back-to-back cups, and people talk about how they have this grossly flawed roster. I'm like, dude, they went to the Stanley Cup final too. They lost to one of the best constructed teams we've ever seen. And I don't think you'll see it again. The third line scores that much. Obviously they got a little benefit because of the injury to Tkachuk. So they were able to add Seth Jones and yada, yada, yada. But that Florida team was probably better than the one before. Now, are they going to be that dominant again? We'll see.
Maybe.
It's going to be hard. We'll see, right? They had a lot of things. To get a lot of your guys all feeling good and all producing at once is extremely hard to do.
Yeah, I'm not buying the idea of a 3, 4, or 5 year deal for McDavid.
Well, 3, yeah, no chance. I thought 5 would be
maybe I just think there's a lot of projecting again on what his agent Judd Moldaver has done previously and what he's advised his clients to do. How do we even know how married Connor McDavid is to Judd Moldaver? He more or less inherited him. His longtime agent, Jeff Jackson, is the CEO of hockey ops for the Oilers.
Yeah.
How often is it that did Michael Jordan's agent ever leave him? It's one of those situations where I go, if Connor McDavid doesn't want to do that, he'll just change agents.
Yeah.
He doesn't need someone barking in his ear.
Oh yeah. No, I don't think his agent's telling him what to do for sure. He might give him some advice. Hey, what do you think? View some things differently, but you're right. Now let's go to the Colorado Avalanche, who lost in 7 to the Dallas Stars off of an unreal third period by Mikko Rantanen in Game 7. Sorry, Avs fans, for reliving your pain. But the Avs, Frank, they currently have the least amount of cap space. They've got all their big guys signed. Well, I guess Jonathan Drouin isn't signed. He had a pretty decent year for them. Jimmy Vesey, also on the back end, Ryan Lindgren, who they acquired, is a UFA. They don't have a ton of cap space.
Space. They got enough for a steak dinner.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like, I think they have the least right now. So what do you think, like, what do you think their organization's looking at doing here? Or are we going to see them, like, you've talked a lot about Marty Necas, and, maybe they're not enamored by what his potential next one would be. Could we see the Avs wheel a few guys out so they can keep some other guys? Or are they just, what we see is what you get from the Avs right now? Is this going to be a quiet summer?
I don't know how it could be a quiet summer. Like, I don't know how they could sit back and do nothing, because they don't have really enough cap space to fill out their roster and be cap compliant for the season. And if that is the case, or if they tried to do that, I don't even think they'd be as good as they were last year. And more in line with the aggression, they were trying to do something that really only one team in league history has done before, which is win the Stanley Cup in a year in which you changed out half of your roster.
Yeah.
They had 11 different players play in the playoffs than they had on their opening night roster. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
So,
it's not.
What are they going to do? Well, they've got options, right? I mean, they could certainly keep Marty Necas and Charlie Coyle and try and move around some of the bottom of the lineup pieces, try and figure out what happens next. But what is Marty Necas looking for in his next deal? What is that AAV, and how much does it make them nervous? Because they're essentially now in a similar position, different player, different price point, that they were with Gabe Landeskog last year, that they found to be not Gabe Landeskog. Oh my God, yeah. I'm saying the wrong names. Mikko Rantanen. What a day. That they were with Rantanen 1 year ago, that they found to be really unpalatable and moved him by January.
Yeah. And the guy that they're talking about now isn't as good as Rantanen.
Not nearly as good.
Yeah. Marty Necas isn't Rantanen. It's not even
He's
close.
A good player. But
yeah,
if he has another north of point per game season, like he did this past year, he's going to be very expensive. That's 2 north of point per game seasons. He's north of 9.
Yeah. The problem is where he is south of in the playoffs, right? Like his playoff production drops significantly. So that was
a choice that the Avs made that I just don't know that they're ever going to live down.
No,
but that's a story for another day.
Totally agree with you.
So
now,
what are the other offshoots?
Girard?
Yeah, I was going to say, so the other offshoots are Coyle, who, if you've got McKinnon and Nelson, Coyle becomes a somewhat expensive 3C for a team that doesn't have cap space. And the other one is moving Sam Girard, but they've been trying to move Sam Girard for 3 seasons now. So who's taking on an undersized defenseman? Most teams only like to have one.
Yeah. Undersized at $5 million. So, yeah, I agree.
Not easy. I think the Avs are in a very tough predicament with their cap situation. And I think as much as they tried to move everything around, it was almost like a sleight of hand that they did with Rantanen. Like, okay, we're moving out this big contract and big commitment, but now, holy smokes, we're right back in it again.
Yeah, no, it's totally valid. And when you look at kind of where they're at and what they have. And man, that Rantanen deal, I think it's going to be really hard for them to end up looking good from that coming out of it. And it's one where, it's, I got to think, like, Nathan McKinnon made it pretty clear at the end of the year. I don't think he was overly happy. And now we'll see kind of where they go. But they're going to have to make some good moves, right? Like, hey, you've been a dominant organization here for the last 5 years, definitely one of the best in the NHL. So now we'll see if they can move the chess pieces around to make that puzzle fit. And it's tough. The West has got a lot of good teams. That division's got a lot of good teams. So how can they move things around to be more competitive? Now, some would argue and say, hey, they could have beat Dallas if it wasn't for a miracle third period. Totally valid. But that doesn't change their cap situation and their lack of flexibility. Had they won a round or two, it wouldn't have changed what their offseason looks like. So, McFarland's going to have to wheel and deal here. And he's one of the top 5 teams I have as far as GM who's got to make some moves and how he's going to do it.
What would you do? What would be the first thing you do?
Well, and I've said this for a long time. Sammy Girard would be the guy, but I think it's Coyle. I think there's a lack of centers around the NHL. You've got Gabriel Landeskog now. You played him. You think he's good. You just can't afford all of them. So I think that those are the two guys. And Coyle only has 1 year left, Frank. He's 5.25. I think there'd be teams that would be interested in him.
Well, yeah, I'm with you. Cash in on the center market. That's probably the easiest path. Because then the next part is, are you going to sign him anyway? He only has 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah, you got McKinnon, you got Nelson, you got Landeskog. I just don't think you need him.
Landeskog's a winger.
Yeah, well, but he'd play center.
I guess.
Yeah, but you're probably right, maybe. But even if Charlie Cole is your third line winger, third line center. Like, he's a good third line center, but when you got no cap space, that's a pretty big ticket to pay for him. Like, you could trade him, and even if you just trade him like a Marchment deal, Frank, where you get a second and a third or whatever you get, then it gives you money to sign some of the other guys.
No,
right?
you need real value. That's the thing. If you're going to trade him, you need real value back, I think. Like, and I think you could get it, to be honest. Like,
could you get a first this year's draft? Like a late first?
I wouldn't want a first. I'd want like 2 pieces that can fit in my lineup that are going to equal that same amount of cap space that I'm better distributing to my roster.
Yeah, that might be hard to make, though, because everybody knows
or one decent defenseman that then makes trading Sam Girard easier.
Yeah. Well, I'd move Girard in a heartbeat. Now, the other team that has a ton of cap space, Frank, I think out of playoff teams, I think they have the most. The LA Kings got a boatload of cap space. Now, they do have some guys that are UFA, so they'll try to sign some of them. But like Gavrikov, obviously being the top of the list for the LA Kings. You've got Tanner Jeannot. You've got Andrei Kuzmenko. Alex Lafayette is an RFA. So they definitely have some internal numbers. There's lots of people with Ken Holland that feel that the Kings might try to make a splash, maybe make a strong push for Mitch Marner, along with Vegas in the Pacific Division. You look at Ken Holland, and I guess let's start with Gavrikov. Like, that seems like the obvious one to get a contract in, but how high do you go on a defensive defenseman?
I think the trouble with Gavrikov is your team's a lot worse without him.
Yep.
And the market is apparently so robust for him in terms of price point that if you don't pay him, someone will, and it's driving up the cost. I think like what we're looking at with Gavrikov is potentially like 7 years times almost $8 million. Wow. I'm telling you, it's going to be expensive. So the Kings are kind of in one here. Like, that you need a player like him to really help stabilize things. But man, is it going to be a tough one to swallow to sign it?
Who would you pay more for, Frank? Gavrikov or Ekblad?
Gavrikov.
Really?
Without really much of a thought.
Okay.
I just think Ekblad's really slowing down on a number of different fronts. And I know that Gavrikov at times has had... There's different elements of Gavrikov's game that people look at and they get really excited about. And I just think he's really well-rounded. I don't think he's truly exceptional in any one category. I just think he does a little bit of everything really well. But Ekblad, think about part of this is the nature of his team and their construction, but part of this is him. Like, he predated all these other guys coming in, of course, being that number one pick. But he went from the last few years, number 1, 2, 3 defensemen. Seth Jones comes in. He's kind of number 4 in that realm. And then you add in on top of it, which something that hasn't been talked about a ton. What about the PED suspension?
Yeah. Well,
like that to me smelled like a guy that is in a contract year that's looking for any advantage that he can get. Does that mean whatever we saw from Ekblad was artificially inflated?
Hey, dude, I'll say it to me. I think it's embarrassing. The NHL should adapt the MLB rule. You get caught for PED during a season, you get your suspension whenever the game is, and you're ineligible for the playoffs. That's what baseball has. Like, you caught cheating. I don't care what your excuse is. I don't care that, oh, geez, I ingested something, blah, blah, blah.
He didn't even give one. It wasn't even like a full-throated, like, oh man, this was a mistake. It was just like, yeah, basically like, yeah, I did it.
Yeah. Well, actually, I prefer that rather than the lies of most guys. Oh, I didn't know what was in my supplement, blah, blah, blah. Give me a break. But to me, the NHL should adapt that in the new CBA. That should be an easy, very simple one. If you get caught PEDs during the season, you take your suspension, whatever the game is, and you're ineligible for the playoffs. Full stop.
But no one is talking about that in terms of his free agent candidacy. How do we really know what the real Aaron Ekblad is? And how long was it going on before he was caught? The NHL doesn't have a robust testing system. Like, who's kidding who?
Yeah. The thing about Ekblad is, like, he actually, he played 24 minutes a night in Florida, second most on their team, led all their defensemen in scoring. He was plus 10. The only guy better, Forsling and Jones, 13 and 11. Like, I could see a lot of teams. Now, he said, I saw his interview again, that they think that they're going to keep him and he wants to stay there. Maybe he's willing to take a little bit less. I'm just kind of curious. But Forsling, like, not Forsling, Gavrikov, I like him a lot. You're paying him $8 million. I think that's a contract, Frank, that probably doesn't age great, in my opinion.
He's never really been a burner, so I don't know how poorly he's going to age. That's my thing with him. And him and Ekblad are the same age. They're a few months apart. I just think if you're the Panthers, and this is a total aside, he's done an unreal job for your organization, and he's been there through thick and thin, has seen it all come together. I'm not signing Ekblad long-term.
Okay. So if Gavrikov gets to the market, who's going after him?
The Rangers. Talk about a team that needs to defend. He's apparently going to be a pretty choosy guy. He's not, he's not
and
going.
The Russians love playing in New York, man. They love.
Yeah, they do. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him land there.
All right. Well, that'd be hey, if LA loses out on him, man, then where do they go? It's not like there's a huge depth of defense either. We talked about centers. There's not a huge list of defensemen either.
No. And the difference, obviously, between Ekblad and Gavrikov, right shot and left shot.
Yes. So that'd be tough. I think they're going to have to play Clark more this year in LA and even Spence maybe a little bit more. But those guys.
If not, is there a chance that one of those guys ends up moving?
Yeah, Spence, maybe I could see it. I don't think I'd move Brad Clark, but.
I don't think I'd move either of them because at some point you're going to need to replace what Drew Doughty brings.
Right. I think Clark. Yeah, Spence. I like Spence a lot. I'm not sold he's made for playoff, but we'll see.
How big of a splash does Ken Holland make in general?
Oh, I think they're going to push hard for Mitch Marner. I don't know if they'll get him, but I think they'll push hard. I think they will come in. He looks in their team and says, hey, if you could add that, get a big score in there. Because like Kopitar is still a very good player, but hey, we know, they're talking about next year might be his last year. So, who knows? I think they'll be going very heavy, Frank. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see them offer more. Like, if Rantanen got 14 in Carolina, I wouldn't be surprised if Marner got 14 in LA.
How would you feel right now if you're Warren Fogle? You leave Edmonton, sign in LA as a free agent, And then you get reunited with the guy who just let you walk out the door.
Well, the guy who let you walk out, the guy who let him walk out the door wasn't making the decisions at that point, but you're right. He was the guy, though, that signed him.
It was a fait accompli, though, that he was leaving.
He was the guy who signed him in Edmonton, or traded for him, I should say. So I don't think he'll mind that much. He wanted more minutes, and he got more minutes. Warren Fogel's more about the coach. Is the coach going to play me? Right? That's kind of what you think about at that point.
Yeah.
Because that's what he wanted. He wanted more opportunity. Let's bring in Ty, and then we'll get to the top four after this. Ty, how you doing?
I'm doing good, boys. Ready to roll with a new edition of Fill in the Blank. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app and get in on the game. Use the code NATION. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. You guys kind of touched on this a little bit earlier on with the Connor McDavid thing. But I wanted to ask about Mitch Marner and the rumblings that, maybe he takes a short-term deal in free agency and tries to build up value and double dip. There is a blank % chance that Mitch Marner signs a short-term deal, Frank.
But what are we deeming short-term?
Under 4 or under. So it's like half of max or less.
I would say very high.
Really?
Yeah.
So different than the McDavid situation, obviously?
Yeah, because I think the other part of it is that if he's going to be taking some time to sort through these options, that leads you to believe that he doesn't have one in hand and that he's not sure about what he wants to do. And if you aren't really sure what you want to do, and there's a financial incentive on the other end of it to go back to the well as many times as you can, then maybe I don't know. Is it same agent? Is it the Taylor Hall route where it's just a little bit different? Obviously different player, but you end up going to a few different teams.
Yeah. Greg's?
Yeah, I could make an argument that on both sides it makes sense. Because you know what? Any team who gets Mitch Marner wants to see, was Mitch Marner's lack of playoff success due to the environment of having all kind of similar main guys? Right? Do you want to commit to 8 years and then you have 2 years in the playoffs and he's not productive in the playoffs? Now you're caught for 8 years. So I could actually see that making sense on both sides. So I will buy.
All right. The other thing, too, is it's not like this is his first chance to sign a big contract. I'm looking at his Puckpedia page. $68 million in estimated career earnings already. Like, it's not like Mitch Marner's only made $20 million in his career. And it's like, is this his first and only chance to kind of cash in? Like, he's already had a pretty big ticket.
Yeah. Well, either way, Leaf fans, if it is a short-term deal elsewhere, they'll just say that he'll go down as one of the greediest players to ever leave their market.
Leafs fans, not big fans of the way the Mitch Marner thing has played out. Let's go from the free agent market to the trade market. You also touched on Noah Dobson a little bit earlier. I mean, I'll say it's relatively rare that a player this good at this point in their career gets to the trade market. So the team that should be prepared to blow the Islanders' doors off with an offer, who should be looking at looking at Dobson, that is, and licking their chops? Greg, a team that should be knocking down the door trying to get Noah Dobson is blank.
Ooh, it's a good question. Well, it's funny because I don't think it would ever happen because it's so close. But the New York Rangers, right? Like younger, because they still got a fairly old team by their like their.
But they have
players.
Adam Fox.
Yeah,
Noah Dobson.
Yeah, Adam Fox didn't have a very good year last year. But
Adam Fox is a Norris Trophy winner, though. Like he already plays right shot D. That's like one of I'm sorry, I'm gonna swat your answer.
Now you can have two good. Hey. I think Florida just showed you it doesn't hurt to have two good pairs.
Oh, okay. So you're going to pay two right shot defensemen $20 million? Like, what are we doing here?
Well, I don't think. First of all, Noah Dobson's ask of $11 million. Like, to me, that's an ask of I'm trying to get out of the market. Like, it's still
$9 in a normal situation.
Yeah. So then that's $18 million for two guys.
Okay, I apologize. 18 instead of 20. You can't do that. Not when they both are power play specialists. Like, it just doesn't work. You're starving for oxygen. That's like the Penguins trading for Carlson. We shit all over that when they had Letang already.
Dobson can defend though. Like Dobson isn't just a power play guy who just produces all his points in the power play. Barely produced any points in the power play last year.
When he had power play was dreadful.
Decent. Well, I agree, but look at the offensive package. I just look at the Rangers. I think they got to get more mobile on their blue line. I don't like their blue line at all, to be honest.
And they
Frank
might trade
Wood.
one of the more mobile guys they have in Keandre Miller.
Yeah, well, that doesn't make sense to me either. Like, when we talk about them on Thursday.
I'm going to say a team that we have repeatedly harped on, the Detroit Red Wings. That makes sense.
They have Mo Seider.
Okay, but at least I could see that being the case, though.
All right.
Got to get good defensemen.
So you just ripped me for having two guys paying that much money, but now Mo Seider is allowed to do it? What the hell are you talking about?
What? So, okay, let's look. Mo Seider, 855 for 6 more years. Okay.
Yeah. So he's
Mo Seider
million
career high in points, 50, and that was 4 seasons ago.
Yeah, but you just talked about salary. You said you couldn't do it. So for $950,000 less, they can do it because that's the difference between Fox.
Okay,
and
let me give you some
I
other.
don't mind it. I don't mind. I'm just saying you can't rip on me and then say it's okay. I don't mind if you do it. I have no problem if they. Here's my question with Detroit, Frank. Do you trust that they know how to evaluate a defenseman?
No.
Right. That's my concern. Like Red Wing fans should be just, gobsmacked over what they've done when their defense core the last few years. And I think it's cost them a playoff berth for sure.
Okay, let me throw some other teams at you because I've been thinking about this a lot. Philadelphia. What about as a replacement for Drew Doughty, since we just talked LA?
Well, I was going to say, if they lose Gavrikov, then the Kings would probably vault to the top of my list.
Totally different defensemen and different hands. What about, we talked about Buffalo. What about Toronto? I think they got to move Morgan Riley, or they should at least consider it. If you're moving Morgan Riley, that's a pretty prime target to put in his spot.
My wild card team, Frank, Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they don't have.
I could see Carolina be way more interested in Erik Karlsson.
That'd be intriguing.
Yeah. If you could get Pittsburgh to eat and you have Karlsson come in and essentially not replace, but he fills a similar role to Brent Burns. But then, like, you've got Gostisbehere. Do you really need him? Like, how much better is Karlsson than Gostisbehere at this point?
I don't know if they need both. I'm kind of curious about Brent Burns, and we'll get into Carolina on Thursday, but he's a fascinating player for me.
Does Columbus do anything for you?
No, they got a lot of money on the back end. Like they got a lot, and they're like, you got Gostisbehere, now they're like, what's happening with them in Provorov, I guess would be my first question.
Oh,
Yeah. I just think there's lots of options, to be honest, on Dobson.
Is there, I realize the market, like the Venn diagram probably overlaps a lot in the middle here, but is there a team out there that you think should be in on Rasmus Andersson that we maybe didn't talk about in that Dobson answer?
I think all those same teams would apply, would they not, Jay?
Yeah.
And I think Rasmus Andersson's a trade deadline move. I really believe. I think you get those competitive teams and all of a sudden they have an injury or they see what they don't have and you're like, man, we can get more. Plus, if I'm the Flames, if I'm going to get a pick from Rasmus Andersson, I'd rather get a 2026 pick and whatever other places I'm going to get rather than a 2025.
This is going to be such a hot take, and someone's going to clip this and it's going to go whatever. I think I might prefer Rasmus Andersson to Noah Dobson.
Really?
Noah, okay. It's more so that I think there's high upside with Andersson putting him in a different environment. This is a double-digit, like a pretty routine double-digit goal scorer who has the ability kind of already to get to 50 points on a team that really struggles to produce offense. Plus, he's obviously more physical, and I think he defends better than Dobson relative to their price points. Like if you say to me that Andersson is $7.5 or $8 million and Dobson is 9 trending toward 11, I think I might want Andersson at price point, acquisition cost, and style of game over Dobson. Is that crazy? Is that the craziest thing you've heard?
Well, if you're talking like if Dobson actually thinks he's going to get 11 mil, then I would agree with you, right? But I think Rasmus Andersson's looking for 9, right?
Is he? I would assume that he kind of caps out in the 8s. Like, what supporting case does he have to get to the 9s?
Cap's going up, and I think honestly, Frank, with the cap going up again,
agents are drunk. They are drunk.
I agree with you. That's my point. Like, the cap is going up. These teams haven't had money for a while. Lots of the big name guys are already locked up. They're going to be like, oh, geez, we got this man. Well, this guy, you know what? We really like him. And now there's 6 teams. And I've had agents tell me flat to my face that you get teams and they know that other GMs will offer more. And it happens. It's free agency. We could do a whole pod on the free agent, just lack of common sense on July 1st. And
I'm with you. It's every team, every summer that we say wins the summer ends up being a terrible team.
Yeah. Like Rasmus Anderson next summer as a free agent could look and say, man, now the cap's going to be over $100 million. What's going to be 102 by 26, 27? He's going to look and say, damn, I can get $10 million and someone would pay him.
But that's why I'm saying I'd rather trade for Anderson than
you get him for a year. You get him for this year for sure. There's the value in really the Anderson deal is what he brings you on the cap this year.
Which players acquisition wise is going to cost less to trade for? Teams are always going to overspend to get Dobson, who has 70 points on his resume and is 25. Anderson's 3 years older at 28 and has a bargain cap year. Yeah. He's still going to cost less than Dobson.
Right. And Anderson, he's a competitive guy. He's
not big.
I'm not sure how tough he is, but he likes to pretend he's tough on the ice. But I think in the playoffs, that can help you, right? Like, he doesn't back down from anybody, right?
Yeah. All right, boys, there you go. I'll let you get back to the Western Conference playoff teams, but that is a wrap on this week's edition of Buy or Sell.
Anderson is a fascinating one, and I think the Flames, it's hard to maximize a guy's value, but you make an argument, Frank, that because of what his cap hit is for the whole season and the amount of minutes he's going to play and where he plays on your team, you're going to get incredible value if you have him the whole year. And his cap hit isn't that high to fit him in. So,
yeah.
Now let's get to the Winnipeg Jets, who made their first offseason acquisition. Jonathan Toews has signed a $2 million base salary with lots of benefit, lots of bonuses that could get up to 5.5 or higher. Toews posted on his Instagram how thrilled he is. Had a picture of him in a Jets jersey. It was actually a Solani. I'd never seen that jersey / shirt sweater before, but obviously it was in the heyday of Teemu Solani and how much beloved he was with the Jets in the 90s. What's your expectation for Toews? And I guess what's the next step in the summer for the Jets?
Well, I can't think of a better marriage, to be honest. The Jets really need, especially with Adam Lowry's injury, to maximize or support the position, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when everyone's healthy, you're interchanging Toews or Lowry as 2 and 3C, I think you're probably going to be in a good spot. I think the contract works for both sides. He gets a little now and lots of upside with each passing game played. And the expectation all centers on his health. If he truly is healthy, if he has found a way for his body to regenerate and rejuvenate, and this chronic immune response syndrome has subsided, or at least he's found ways to have it subside. Think about what he did in his last year. And I know that was a few years ago, but he was on pace for 53 points in an 82-game season while mostly sick. If that's better, even with the time passed, if you could put that down as a benchmark of an expectation, they're going to be thrilled with 50 points in an 82-game season. Thrilled. And then you get to see what Jonathan Toews is as a 3-time Stanley Cup winner and Conn Smythe winner in the playoffs.
Well, the Jets, they have of all the top teams, man, look at the guys they've got to sign. So they got Nikolai Ehlers, UFA, Mason Appleton, UFA, Brendan Tanev, UFA, Gabriel Velarde, RFA, Morgan Barron, RFA, Hayden Fleury, who actually I thought played really well for them in the playoffs. Him and Dylan Sandberg, UFA, and then Sandberg's an RFA. They got lots of guys. Now, they're not going to be able to keep all of them. Nikolai Ehlers might price himself out. We'll see. But what do you look at the Jets and how many of those guys are going to be able to retain? And do you think Ehlers is a lock to go to free agency?
I do. I think Ehlers is at least going to test it out. I think he's a guy that the Jets have really wanted to keep. I think they've tried to go the distance in making him know how much they want him back. I think his teammates have tried to put on some pressure to try and get him back. They want him. It's just that he's gotten this far, and I think he'd prefer a market that's a little bit less intense, that doesn't run as white hot, that isn't as – it's not about getting to a warmer place or getting to a place that is a bigger city or anything like that. He wants less attention, less focus, less limelight, and with that, there's probably some options for him.
Yeah, no, there definitely would be. And, Nick Ehlers is a guy who, health is a little bit of a concern, but man, when he's in there, like he's a gamer in the playoffs. And I think for competitive teams, that's something you look for. Obviously,
60 points a year is what he gives you basically.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's pretty consistent player, right? Pretty consistent player. And the Jets lose him. That's obviously a loss for them. I think Gabe Vilardi's the main guy they want to sign.
Yeah, and I don't imagine that's going to be an absolute tug of war, but they've got tons of cap space. And look, their season next year is they're going to have to get to work on the Kyle Connor file. He's eligible to sign an extension on July 1, but their season next year it's going to hinge on what is Connor Hellebuyck. Is he closer to the Hart Trophy winner, Vezina, surefire 31 out of 32 first place votes? Or is he the guy that really struggled in the playoffs and wasn't one of the first 6 players named to the Team USA Olympic roster?
Yeah. 3 years in a row struggled in the playoffs. So yeah, it is a valid question. And that's kind of their whole success basically falls back on that. Because
would you trade? I guess you would. Would you trade a down regular season from him to his own standard for him to be better in the playoffs?
All day. I would the one thing I would do different this year, I would lower his starts in the regular season. I'd just start there and say, hey, this is our plan. We'll see. Maybe you're mentally fresher. I don't know. I get you want to play. I understand you want to play, but we're going to monitor that a little bit more this year.
But how much did it impact Bobrovsky? Who then played every single second of the postseason for Florida?
Yeah. Well, no, it's a valid point, but it's 3 years in a row. That's why I'm like, if you just can do the exact same thing and just assume it's going to get better, I guess that's my argument to it, right?
I guess what I come back
and
to.
And hey, by the way, Frank, but Bobrovsky only started 54 games, right? Hellebuyck started. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not asking him to go from 60 to 50. But just drop it down to 55 range.
Okay. My thing with the Jets is they're a really difficult team to evaluate because of how good the goaltending was. It's hard to really understand how good are they. Their power play was excellent. Their special teams were both really good. Like,
hey, dude, the goalie environment that Hellebuyck had in the regular season was one of the most favorable of any team.
That's what I'm saying. Is that a nod to him or is that a nod to them?
No, that's a nod to them. When they say the most favorable, it's meaning how many high danger quality chances he faced compared to other goalies. Like, he had one of the most favorable goalie situations that allows you to make saves based on the chances that they allowed in front of him.
Yeah.
So that's all on the team defense. So they played it well. Now, it wasn't as good in the playoffs, and when it wasn't as good, he wasn't as good. And that's like the one thing we're learning, Frank, about goaltending is, now it's hard, but every goalie has a weakness. And if you can exploit it, and we've seen teams do that with Hellebuyck. So,
man, do they have a really favorable salary cap table, though? Not a single player making an 8-digit AAV. Kyle Connor is probably going to change that. But Pionk, very reasonable deal. Like we just talked about Gavrikov and about Dobson and about all these defensemen, Ekblad. Pionk signed 6 years, reasonable term, and really reasonable cap hit. Like I'm envious. Hellebuck south of $9 million. They're in such a good position moving forward, cap wise, that they could do anything they want.
Yeah, well, you're right. You just need your best guys to be better in the playoffs for the Jets. That's really what it comes down to for them. Like they're entering what we've talked about for the Leafs for years, is that, hey, now what can they do? And specifically their goalie, what can you do come playoff time? The Vegas Golden Knights, Frank, they kind of went out with a whimper to the Oilers, got shut out in games 4 and 5. I think they're going to be looking for offense on their team. People are wondering, hey, how healthy is Alex Pietrangelo? We know that Vegas has no qualms at all to move guys out at any point. I still think they're going to go hard after Mitch Marner. What other moves do you see them making? Because if they're going to add Marner, they got to move somebody out.
Some have suggested that the Marner pursuit already began in earnest back at the trade deadline. Now, how far things got, I don't think they ever got to a place where the Leafs had a deal in principle, but the three-way trade that was talked about was Rantanen to Toronto, Marner to Vegas, and both of those teams funneling assets to Carolina. But I don't think it ever got to a place for Carolina where they were comfortable with what they were getting in return for Rantanen. And that's really where the deal died. Yeah. However, there seemed to be an indication, even though the Leafs never formally went to the Marner camp to ask, that A, it would be a place that he'd be willing to go to, and B, that there was a contract to be done where he would agree to extend. Fast forward to this past weekend, one of the hot rumors, unsubstantiated, unconfirmed, from my view, and I did ask around, was that Mitch Marner and his family or Mitch Marner's family was spotted perusing the housing market in Vegas over the weekend. Again, take it for what you will. I have no verification that actually happened, but that was the speculation behind the scenes. What does that mean? Like, how long will this process be? Will he sign on July 1? What type of contract is he looking for? All great questions. But the biggest question for Vegas is, how on earth could they possibly make this work? And I think it starts with an Alex Pietrangelo trip to LTIR.
Okay. A Nicholas Hague trade then as well?
Maybe. No one has said to me that they're trying to move him. There was
they just don't have the cap space to sign him.
Right. But how expensive is he going to be? And are there other options to move first?
Because, like, even if you put Pietrangelo in LTIR and Marner's getting what? Let's just say 12. He's getting Rantanen money. That's still, an extra 3.2. They currently only have, 9.6. So that would put them down to 6.4, and they'd have to sign Hague. They've only got 9 forwards under contract. So, like, even if that trade and him to LTIR, they still got to move out somebody else, I think.
I'm wondering if it gets to that point, and you probably can't do both, but like Pietrangelo on LTIR, and that's not a certainty, by the way. That's just the speculation. Does it make sense to move one of those other high-priced defensemen? Hanifin. Look at the market. Look at what we just talked about. Like, if you were to just go, like, let's say today Noah Hanifin became a UFA and you were to sign him to a deal. He's got 7 years left at 7.35. Would he not get more on the open market?
Yeah, now I'd have to. Yeah, and he just signed too. But like I said, Vegas, they're not scared to change on the fly. So.
Full no trade, by the way.
Yes. So
not that that's ever been an issue for Vegas, but point is, the bottom line for Vegas is the night always advances, never retreats. That's what their team motto is. So I think expect more of the same.
If you put me, and I've been saying it, I said it since the they were knocked out of the playoffs. And they said, if Marner gets the free agency, Vegas is top my list of teams where he will sign. So I look at, some of the other guys, they've got some UFAs, no real big names, Riley Smith, Brandon Saad, Tanner Pearson, Victor Olofsson, guys who they probably feel like, hey, we could replace with other guys, probably cheaper and get you similar stuff. So just kind of more down the bottom of the order type of guys. Cole Schwint and Alexander Holtz and Jonas Ronsberg are all RFAs, and none of them I think are going to cost very much. So I think Vegas will reload. I still wonder. I think they got to get a little bit more speed in their top 6. So obviously, I guess if they do Marner, that would help in that regard. So we'll see where they go, which leads us to the Western Conference finalists, the Dallas Stars, who have already made lots of moves. They traded Marchment. They signed Lundqvist and Bork to 1-year deals. They signed Matt Duchene to a 4-year deal at $4.5 million. I look at their cap situation, and they don't have a ton of cap space now, and they got Jamie Benn. I don't think they're going to be able to sign Granlund. Probably not Dadonov. Colin Blackwell, Frank, for a low-end guy and his speed, I could see him being enticing. I really liked him in the playoffs for a depth guy. Not going to cost you very much. I'm talking like $1 million. But, I think they want to get Jamie Benn back. Do you see anything else? Like Cody Ceci, I don't know if they have the money for him. He's probably going to market.
Yeah, they don't have the money for him. Look, Blackwell would make sense to keep. I mean, not going to cost you an arm and a leg. And I was at the one game in Dallas where he did score the OT winner. So he gives you one OT winner in the playoffs and you're over the moon. Jamie Benn, they've been talking about a short-term over 35 contract, small salary with performance bonuses that they could punt to the following year if they wanted to. They still got to do something on their defense. Look, you can't be paying that much money to Dumba and Lyubushkin.
Yeah.
Now, people have said, oh, the Stars aren't going to buy out Dumba. They're going to try and trade him. I just don't know who's taking him off your hands for free, even for free, knowing that you're in cap hell and knowing that this is a guy that was a healthy scratch for every playoff game. Every playoff game.
Yeah.
And Lyubushkin has 2 years. I think he's even more difficult to move, but that's one way to clear up space. You've got to move those guys out. You have to do it.
Oh, no, 100% they have to. And hey, they played Alex Petrovic, man, and he's making league minimum. And he's got 1 year left in his deal. He clearly showed he can play for them, so that's not a problem. But I'll be curious about, the market for a guy like Cody Ceci when there's not a ton of defensemen available. And, the guy's played on top 4 defense cores on any team he plays on. And I kind of be curious what he would get and where he would go.
I think he came in and I thought they liked what he brought. Same thing with Granlund. They're not in a position to keep these guys.
Yeah, they don't have the cap space to do it. Which leads us to the Western Conference champion, Edmonton Oilers, back-to-back years. Frank, they make it back-to-back years. Everybody knows what happened in the Cup final. Their big offseason, Stan Bowman outlined, their defense core, they've got 9 defensemen signed, and they don't even have Evan Bouchard signed. So they're not making any moves, I don't think, on the blue line. Bowman even outlined that. Forwards and goaltending is where it goes. And that's where I look, and I know you said Jordan Binnington, Frank, but what if the Oilers can entice? Would you do it if you're Edmonton and, if you're St. Louis, because if you're moving Binnington in, then that means you're moving Skinner out. And then you had Hofer and Skinner as your goaltending tandem. Would you do that if you were St. Louis?
If I'm St. Louis, no. If I'm Edmonton, also probably not.
Yeah. Binnington doesn't I think Anton Forsberg might be the best option for Edmonton to bring in and kind of have a duo challenge. I looked at Skinner, and there's only 7 goalies in the NHL who played 30 games that are younger than him, Frank. And they've combined to play 3 playoff games. And that's Kochevkov, and that's Joel Hofer and Dostal. Some good goalies, don't get me wrong. But Stuart Skinner's still really young is what I'm trying to say. And he's had a lot of experience. This year, I thought he made improvements. He didn't.
Why Forsberg?
Why Anton Forsberg? Well, because I look at the free agent market. Jake Allen's probably going to cost you too much. And then I look like Ilya Samsonov, Dan Vladar. I just think Forsberg has the best potential upside for your team.
I would be trading for Thatcher Demko. And I know that the Canucks and Oilers, there's obviously going to be some kind of premium to send him somewhere in their division. But I think he's the highest end guy. I mean, this is a Vezina finalist. And even if he's hurt for a chunk of the year, if he's healthy at the right time of the year, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, it's a pretty big if, though, don't you think?
I'd rather take that if over the fickle nature of the position, though. When he plays, he's good. When he doesn't, he's not. I mean, John Gibson, and good reminder, John Gibson has the same agent as Victor Arvidsson. So the Oilers are in constant communication with Arvidsson having the full no trade as they're trying to move him. I'm sure, wink, wink, John Gibson has come up a time or two in conversation. But he wasn't a starter last year.
Oh,
and his numbers are good, or they improved. His body language improved in a significant way. Seemed like a guy who was much more at ease with everything, which is important because if he's going to come in, he has to play well and get along with Skinner. But maybe it goes in the other direction in that you're also going to have to pay Skinner a year from now. Do you just trade Skinner completely off the books?
Well, that's the risk. Like, you're trading him for, let's say, Gibson or Demko. To me, the best.
No, separate. It would be a separate deal. Like, I don't think you send him to one of those other teams. I think you send him somewhere else.
Okay. But okay. Either way, then you're trading him out and you're bringing those guys in. I look at Edmonton, and if I'm the GM, the best ability is availability, and Demko and Gibson, that's a concern. Right. The one thing now, you can have concerns about Skinner. Like, he improved this year, Frank, in the playoffs. He didn't allow a bad goal. Now, he made a bad decision on the third goal by Florida. No question. Right. Like, why he just didn't hold the puck. I don't understand it. But no mid-tier goals, no low-end goals were allowed. He just allowed high danger. So he improved, because the year before he used to let in some goals. You're like, what? That goal can't go in. So it's a progressive improvement. And he's not hurt. The only time he's been injured really is when he got ran over, and he was out for just over a week with a concussion symptoms. So I'm leery of a position where you're going to have him and you're going to trade him away for guys who are older with a track record of being injured. I get that their top end game is better, and I think that's fair.
This is again a year-to-year proposition. He doesn't have a contract moving forward. If he's no good, he walks. But you have some of the best players in the world. You have a window to win and a team that's gone to 2 straight Stanley Cup finals. I want someone good.
Yeah. Well,
Anton Forsberg, no good. Not high-end potential. Anton Forsberg is another version of Cal Pickard.
No, I think he's better. But I look at Demko, and you're right about when he plays, and it is his last year, so that would make sense. But what are they going to want in return in Vancouver?
The price is expensive. The 3 goalies available on the trade market, my understanding, are Demko, Gibson, and Hofer. Outside of that, everyone wants to keep their guy.
Yeah. Well, then if I was Edmonton and those are my 3 options, I would go Hofer.
Tyler said Merzlikins. I mean, Merzlikins is 31 years old.
Yeah,
he's 3 straight seasons. His average over the last 3 seasons is .890. He's not getting it done in Columbus.
No. Yeah, that's
now. Do you think security?
Do you think Edmonton is going to go to bring someone in to be a kind of a tandem with Skinner, or do you think they're going to bring in someone to be the starter and move Skinner?
That's what I said. I think they're open to either one.
What would you do?
I would bring someone in to play with Skinner, because if it doesn't work out, I want to keep Skinner.
100%.
And I'm also not sold that Skinner doesn't work. I just think that, even as you mentioned, by goalie terms, still relatively young, some would say, okay, you've got enough history now to know that he is what he is, but that's not necessarily how it works with goalies.
God, no. Ask Bobrovsky. His own organization, Frank, was like, I'm not sure about this guy. They signed a rookie at $4.5 million. And then Bobrovsky went, all world for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So now he had been pretty good before at times, but there had been 3 years in Florida though they were ready to get rid of him.
Yeah. I mean, you could go back way further to the Flyers, but yeah.
Yeah. So it is, it's a finicky position. We talked about Hellebuck earlier, and that's, man, I'd rather have two options for sure. So,
but the Oilers up front, they move Arvidsson, try and move Kane.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that they're adding Savoy full time.
Yeah, they already signed Thomas Ek, who led the Swedish Elite League in scoring. He's going to get a look. Trent Frederick's going to get signed. I think that Edmonton, I look at Edmonton and I think their goaltending, that's their number one thing in the offseason, Frank. And I think, I've talked about it, and some people in Edmonton freaked out. I said, I would move Nugent Hopkins to be my third line center. He's proven to be better at center than he is at a wing, and I would try Adam Henrique there. Now, keep in mind, this is regular season. I believe that Edmonton, where their moves are going to be made at the deadline, they'll look to add a top six forward and maybe a right shot defense. But they don't have the cap space to do it all year long. You can accrue space and then get the guy at 1/6 of his contract when you do it at the deadline. And that's what I think their plan is going to be.
You think there's any chance they move Henrique?
I guess there's a chance, but he's really good on faceoffs. He's a smart player. He doesn't get scored on a lot. You could do it, but then who are your left wingers then? So he's gone. Nugent Hopkins, your third line center. You got Trent Frederick and Podkolzin as your left wingers. I don't know. You could move Henrique, I guess, and then I guess you keep Kane. You're not going to move both of them. You're saying you move Henrique over Kane? That makes sense.
Kane first.
Yes. Yeah, I think they're good. So I don't know if they have to move Henrique then.
And give us the AAV that Evan Bouchard comes in at.
I'm going to say 10.2.
The old 10-2C. Okay.
Yeah. What do you think?
10 flat.
10 flat, yeah. He's going to get signed. Now, he does, for anybody wondering, he would have offer sheet eligibility for 4 days. And the only reason I say that is because he has to file for arbitration by the 5th. There's no chance they're not going to file for arbitration if they don't have an offer sheet at that point. Why would you? That would be stupid. Because arbitration, Frank, he's got the numbers. He'll get a big ticket in arbitration. And it guarantees you get a contract. So
for arbitration would be the dumbest path that both of these two sides could go down.
Well, you can file for arbitration, then just gives you another window to negotiate a contract before you ever go to it. But I agree, settling on arbitration, yeah, that would be terrible.
Because it'd be really bad for the Oilers.
Yeah, be short term. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm just outlining it because that's obviously a big move for them. Bouchard's contract, the goaltender. I think they get some depth forwards.
And then get McDavid.
And then, I think McDavid's contract, Frank, I know there's lots of talk about it. McDavid's contract will be signed before they get to training camp.
Okay.
What do you think?
I think just whenever he decides he wants to do it. 8 times 16, done deal. $128 million. Move on.
8 times 16. All right. It's a good pod. Coming up on Thursday, it'll be the day before the draft. There might be some deals. We've seen some Wednesday deals leading up to the draft, and we'll do the 8 teams that we haven't touched on in the Eastern Conference. It's the Rundown. Gregor, Seravalli, presented by Bet365. Have a great day.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe button.